My friends, I want you to take a moment and think about the last time you felt truly in control. Not just in control of a situation, but in control of yourself. Was it during a heated conversation when you chose silence instead of shouting? Or perhaps in a market downturn when you held your position while others panicked? The wisdom I've been fortunate to gather over 7 decades, both in the frantic halls of finance and the quiet study of ancient texts, has led me to a startling yet simple truth. The ultimate power in this life is not in what you possess, nor in the title you hold, but in the stillness of your own mind. Machiavelli, a man often misunderstood, spoke of a cold law of mental power. He understood that the person who can remain calm and composed in a storm is the one who truly holds the rudder. This isn't about being emotionless. It acts about mastering your internal state so that it is not dictated by the chaos around you. It is the art of being a silent mountain in the face of a howling wind. Let me tell you about a dear friend, a man named Eli. Eli was a brilliant man, a successful entrepreneur who had built a flourishing business from the ground up. He was sharp, quick on his feet, and had an answer for every problem. But beneath that polished exterior, he was in a constant state of internal turmoil. Every minor crisis, a missed deadline, a difficult client email, an unexpected market shift, would send him into a frenzy. His energy was reactive, his decisions often impulsive. One day, while we were walking in a park, he got a call from his head of sales with some bad news. I watched as his face went from a peaceful smile to a mask of frustration. He began to pace, his voice rising, his gestures becoming frantic. He barked orders and made promises he couldn't keep, all because he couldn't stand the discomfort of the bad news. He was a slave to his emotions, and his team saw it. They respected his success, but they did not see him as a rock. Contrast this with the Jewish concept of menucha, or inner rest. It's not about being idle. It asks about a state of deep tranquility and inner peace that allows one to act from a place of clarity and purpose. It is the antithesis of Eli's frantic energy. When we are in a state of menucha, our actions are deliberate, our words are measured, and our presence commands a silent authority that doesn't need to be loud to be heard. This calm demeanor isn't a trick. It's the natural outflow of a disciplined mind. It signals to others that you are not threatened, that you have a plan, and that you are not going to be swayed by their panic. When you walk into a chaotic meeting and simply sit, your hands folded, your gaze steady, you don't need to say a word to make an impact. Your stillness becomes a gravitational force, a center of gravity that others are unconsciously drawn to. This isn't about power for its own sake, but about creating an environment of trust and stability that allows for clear thinking and effective action, both for yourself and for those around you. Have you ever noticed how the most respected leaders are often the ones who speak the least? A practical example of this is in how you handle your mornings. Instead of waking up and immediately checking your phone, allowing the world's anxieties to rush in, try this. For the first 10 minutes, simply sit in silence. Drink a cup of water, watch the sunrise, or just focus on your breath. This simple act of creating a moment of minutia before the day begins sets a precedent. You are telling your mind that you are in charge, not the barrage of notifications and headlines. You are training yourself to be the silent mountain, not the frantic wave. This isn't just a spiritual exercise, it's a powerful mental discipline. It's a way of saying, I will not be dictated by the external world. Have you ever noticed how a frantic morning can lead to a frantic day? What is one small moment of stillness you can build into your morning routine this week? The most powerful men and women I have known did not find power by chasing it. They found it by cultivating a quiet, unwavering mind that became its own source of authority. The world today operates on a principle of reaction. A headline screams, and we react. A text message arrives, and we react. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and we react. We are conditioned to be slaves to our emotional reflexes. This is a sign of surrender, my friends, a quiet admission that we are not in command of our own inner world. The truly powerful, the truly abundant, are those who have learned to slow down when the world speeds up. They have trained their minds to observe, not to impulsively respond. This is not some esoteric Zen practice. It's a fundamental principle of effective living, a core component of building not just financial wealth, but also a wealth of inner peace and wisdom. I saw this play out with a young man I mentored named David. David had an excellent mind for investing, but his emotional wiring was a constant liability. He would buy a stock based on solid research, but the moment it dipped 5%, he would panic. He'd check the charts every 5 minutes, read every negative forum post, and within a day or two he'd sell at a loss, convinced the sky was falling. He was constantly whipsawed by the market's emotional gyrations. His mind, for all its potential, was a passenger, not the driver. We worked on this together, not by studying more stock charts, but by practicing a simple discipline. When a position would drop, he was to intentionally step away from the computer. For an hour, he was to do something else entirely: walk, read, or even just sit and breathe. The goal wasn't to ignore the problem, but to create a space between the emotional trigger, the dip, and his reflexive response, the panic cell. The simple act of creating this pause, this selah, as our sages might say, allowed his rational mind to catch up. He began to see the dips not as threats, but as opportunities, or at the very least moments for calm observation. His returns improved, of course, but more importantly, so did his peace of mind. He was no longer a frantic puppet on the string of market fear. This is a profound physiological and psychological truth. When we are triggered, our amygdala, the brain's fear center, goes into overdrive. It floods our system with stress hormones like cortisol, preparing us for fight or flight. In this state, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logical thought and long-term planning, is effectively muted. We lose our ability to think clearly, to see the bigger picture. This is why impulsive decisions are almost always bad decisions. The key is to interrupt this neurological feedback loop. By consciously choosing to slow down, by taking a deep breath, stepping away, or simply counting to 10, we give our prefrontal cortex a chance to come back online. We move from a state of raw, emotional reaction to one of considered, thoughtful response. This isn't just about financial markets, it's about life. When a spouse says something hurtful or a child acts out, our first impulse is often a sharp retort. But what happens if, for just a moment, we break that reflex? We might find that what we really want to say is not what our first angry thought dictates. Have you ever regretted an impulsive outburst? Think of how much pain could be avoided if we simply learn to create that crucial pause. The disciplined mind understands that true power comes not from the speed of its reaction, but from the depth of its consideration. It's the difference between a knee-jerk punch and a precisely aimed strike. So, I ask you, where in your life are you a slave to your emotional reflexes? Is it in your finances, your relationships, your health decisions? The path to abundance begins not with more doing, but with more being. Being present enough to observe your emotions without being consumed by them. In a world that values authenticity, the idea of wearing a mask of composure can seem deceptive, but I want to challenge that notion. This isn't about being inauthentic, it's about disciplined self-presentation. It's about deciding who you will be in the face of adversity and then embodying that person until it becomes your reality. Think of it not as a lie, but as an aspirational truth, a vision of yourself that you are actively building. This discipline earns a profound and lasting respect because people intuitively trust a person who is in command of themselves. They see not a fraud, but a person of integrity who has chosen to rise above their immediate, often petty, emotional state. I saw this principle brilliantly executed by a man named Isaac. Isaac was a manufacturer of high-end furniture, and a few years ago, a crucial shipment of exotic wood was held up in customs for weeks due to a bureaucratic snafu. The delay was costing him tens of thousands of dollars a day and putting his largest client at risk. Internally, Isaac was a furnace of anxiety, but externally he was a glacier. In every meeting with his team and his client, he maintained a calm, steady demeanor. He didn't rant or assign blame, he simply laid out the facts, presented the limited options, and asked for their input. He kept his voice low, his movements deliberate. The client was furious at first, but Isaac's unwavering calm was so disarming that it shifted the entire dynamic. The client saw a professional, not a panicked victim. Over time, that disciplined composure became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because he acted calm, his mind started to calm down. Because his mind was calm, he was able to think clearly and eventually find a creative solution. The mask wasn't a cover-up, it was a tool that helped him navigate the crisis, and in doing so, he became the person he was pretending to be. This discipline is deeply rooted in our spiritual heritage. Maimonides, one of the greatest Jewish thinkers, taught that we must actively practice virtuous behaviors, even if we don't feel them internally at first. By consistently acting with kindness, for instance, we eventually become a kinder person. The same is true for composure. The repeated act of projecting a calm exterior, of taking control of your body language, your tone of voice, and your facial expressions actually rewires your nervous system over time. It's a form of biofeedback. Your body sends signals to your brain, we are calm, therefore we are safe. This reduces the flow of stress hormones and strengthens the neural pathways associated with self-regulation. So, the mask is not a form of deceit, it's a powerful and practical exercise in self-mastery. It is the difference between being a leaf tossed about by the wind and being a tree whose roots run deep. Have you ever tried to maintain a calm demeanor in a stressful situation, only to find that it actually made you feel calmer? This is a vital lesson for anyone who seeks to build a life of abundance. The market, like life, is a chaotic place filled with triggers designed to make you panic. The client, the boss, the family member who pushes your buttons, they are all tests of your inner discipline. By choosing to wear the mask of composure, you are not pretending. You are making a conscious choice to be the architect of your own inner world, rather than letting external forces do it for you. This is a form of power that cannot be bought or sold. It is earned through rigorous, daily self-application. What is one situation this week where you can consciously choose to put on this mask and see what happens? In our fast-paced, noisy world, stillness is not a weakness, it is a gravitational force. When everyone else is in a frantic rush, the person who remains still becomes the center of attention, the point of calm that others are drawn to. This isn't about being passive, it is about being so internally secure that you don't feel the need to fill every silence or react to every stimulus. This kind of stillness signals to the world that you are not threatened, that you have a plan, and that you are operating from a place of unshakable confidence. It is a source of profound influence because it creates a vacuum that others are compelled to fill, often revealing their own hand in the process. I witnessed this in a high-stakes negotiation I was part of years ago. The opposing side, led by a young, ambitious executive, was relentless. He spoke quickly, presented a flood of data, and constantly tried to force our hand. My partner in the negotiation, a seasoned veteran named Jacob, did the opposite. He spoke slowly, deliberately, and often he said nothing at all. He would listen to the executive's tirade, and then, after a long, pregnant pause, he would simply nod or ask a single penetrating question. The executive, unable to stand the silence, would often continue to talk, revealing information he hadn't intended to share. He would contradict himself, give away his weak points, and eventually exhaust himself. Jacob's stillness became a spotlight, illuminating the other man's impatience and lack of control. By doing nothing, he was doing everything. His calm presence communicated a level of power that the executive's frantic energy could never hope to achieve. This dynamic is rooted in a fundamental psychological principle. When someone maintains stillness in a conversation, especially after another person has spoken, it creates a sense of expectation and discomfort. The human brain is wired to seek resolution, to fill in the blanks. The person who spoke feels the urge to explain, to justify, to keep talking to alleviate the tension of the silence. A skillful listener, by simply remaining still and attentive, can use this to their advantage. They are not being manipulative, they are simply creating a space for clarity. They are allowing the truth to emerge. This is a far more powerful tool than a clever retort or an aggressive counter-argument. Our ancient traditions have always understood this. The mystics who sought Bodhidharma seclusion understood that in the silence one is able to hear the deepest truths, both from within themselves and from the world around them. Have you ever been in a conversation where a simple pause from the other person made you rethink what you were about to say? Turning stillness into influence is a discipline that can be practiced in every aspect of your life. It's about resisting the urge to have the last word, to fill the awkward silence, or to immediately respond to every challenge. In your financial life, it means not reacting to every market fluctuation, but rather sitting in quiet confidence with your long-term plan. In your relationships, it means listening with your full attention, allowing the other person to speak without interruption, even if it means sitting in silence for a moment after they've finished. The person who is most comfortable with stillness is often the person with the most power, because they are not being driven by fear, but guided by an inner calm that commands respect. True composure, my friends, is an active presence, not a passive one. It is a form of discipline that extends to every part of your being. It's in the way you hold your body, the tone of your voice, and the timing of your responses. By consciously mastering these small external details, you begin to build an internal fortress of calm. This is a powerful practical skill that can be developed by anyone who is willing to pay attention to the seemingly insignificant details of their own presentation. They are not insignificant. They are the building blocks of an unshakable presence. I learned this lesson decades ago from a mentor of mine, a man who had the quietest voice in any room, but who commanded the most attention. His name was Rabbi Mendel. I was a young, ambitious man back then, full of nervous energy. In meetings, I would fidget, talk too quickly, and interrupt others to make my point. Rabbi Mendel, on the other hand, was a master of his physical self. He moved with a deliberate slowness. His posture was upright and steady. His hands, when he wasn't using them to make a point, were often clasped in his lap, still. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady, never rushing. He was not a loud man, yet when he spoke, the room fell silent. It was as if his very presence demanded respect. I observed him for years, and I began to understand that he wasn't just a person of wisdom, he was a person of discipline. He had consciously cultivated every aspect of his self-expression. He taught me that your body is a reflection of your mind. If your body is in chaos, so is your mind. If you want a calm mind, you must first create a calm body. This principle is supported by simple physiology. When we maintain a confident, upright posture, it actually signals to our brain to release more testosterone and less cortisol, the stress hormone. A steady, calm tone of voice, particularly in a deep register, can also have a calming effect on our own nervous system and on the people we are talking to. It's a form of physiological feedback. When we rush to fill a silence, or when we speak too fast, we are sending a signal of anxiety and a lack of control. By contrast, a strategic pause, the deliberate choice to wait for a moment before you respond, gives you time to think and gives your words more weight. It shows that you are in no rush, that you are the one in control of the pace of the conversation. Our ancient traditions have long understood that derech eretz, a term often translated as good manners or the way of the world, includes this kind of physical discipline. It's the dignified, respectful way of being that signals inner strength. Have you ever noticed how someone with a strong, calm presence can change the entire mood of a room without saying a word? So, my friends, I encourage you to begin this work not just with your thoughts, but with your body. Pay attention to your posture in a meeting. Notice the tone of your voice when you get frustrated. Practice a strategic pause before you respond to a challenging question. These small daily disciplines are the raw material for building a truly unshakable inner calm. They are the keys to a power that is not fleeting but enduring. Emotional detachment, in its truest form, is not about becoming a robot. It is not about suppressing your feelings or becoming apathetic to the world. On the contrary, it is a profound discipline of preserving your clarity by not allowing your emotions to consume you. It is the recognition that emotions are not commands to be obeyed, but rather signals to be understood. This distinction is a hallmark of the wise and a prerequisite for making sound decisions in any arena, from the boardroom to the dinner table. When you can observe your anger without becoming your anger, you gain a level of freedom that is more valuable than any physical possession. Let me introduce you to a woman named Sarah, a successful real estate investor I've known for many years. Early in her career, she was on the verge of closing a deal on a beautiful property, a deal that would have been a significant win for her. But at the last minute, the seller began to make unreasonable demands, clearly trying to take advantage of her eagerness. Sarah felt a surge of frustration and anger, all the typical emotions of being wronged. Her first instinct was to walk away in a fit of pride, to tell the seller where he could put his house. But she paused. She took a moment to mentally step back and observe her own emotions. She said to herself, "That's anger. It's a signal that I feel disrespected. But is this anger useful right now? Is it going to help me achieve my goal?" By treating her emotion as a signal, not a command, she was able to detach from the immediate impulse. She went back to the negotiation table with a calm mind, saw the seller's true weakness, and found a way to save the deal on her own terms. The emotional detachment wasn't about not caring. It was about caring enough about her long-term goals to not let a fleeting emotion derail them. From a spiritual perspective, this echoes the profound Jewish philosophical concept of yishuv hada'at, or settledness of mind. It's the ability to maintain composure and clarity, particularly when facing a challenge. It's the opposite of being flighty or consumed by your passions. This state of mind allows us to perceive a situation not just in its emotional moment, but in its broader context. When you can detach, you move from a reactive state to a strategic one. You begin to see patterns instead of just pressure. You can ask yourself, why is this person acting this way? Instead of just feeling the personal offense. You can think, what is the true risk here? Instead of just feeling the fear. This is because emotional detachment frees up mental bandwidth. It moves the focus from the internal turmoil to the external problem, allowing for more creative and effective solutions. Have you ever noticed how your clearest decisions are made not when you are in the heat of a moment, but after you've had time to cool down and reflect? The path to building a life of true abundance requires this skill. There will always be setbacks, disappointments, and people who will try to take advantage of you. If you allow every one of these events to consume you emotionally, you will be in a constant state of turmoil, and your energy will be spent fighting internal battles instead of building an external reality. Learning to observe your emotions without being controlled by them is perhaps one of the most powerful skills you can ever acquire. The strategic pause is perhaps the most underrated and powerful tool in the arsenal of a composed mind. It is the simple act of waiting before you act or speak, and it is a revolutionary act in a culture that rewards speed and impulsivity. This pause breaks the frantic rhythm of interaction, and it gives you a profound advantage. It allows you to observe with greater clarity, to consider your response rather than just reacting, and it often compels others to reveal more than they intended. A well-timed pause can transform a simple statement into a thunderclap and a tense moment into a decisive victory. I recall a moment in my career where this was put to the test. I was in a room with a client who was trying to push us into a deal that was not in our best interest. He was a master of talking, of creating a sense of urgency and momentum. He laid out his proposal, and then he stopped. The room was silent, and the pressure was on me to respond immediately. My younger self would have rushed to fill that void, to counter his points, but I had learned better. I simply sat there for what felt like an eternity, perhaps 10 or 15 seconds, and I looked him in the eye. I didn't fidget. I didn't smile. I just let the silence hang. The strategic pause was a subtle but powerful signal. It communicated to him that I was not intimidated, that I was not a puppet on his string of urgency. His composure began to crack. He started to speak again, not to clarify his points, but to justify them, to sweeten the deal, to reveal his own anxieties. My silence had created a space for him to expose his own weakness, and it gave me all the information I needed to confidently counter his offer. This power of the pause is not just a psychological trick, it has a deep basis in our physiology and our spiritual heritage. In the Bible, there are moments where the text says, Selah, a word that marks a pause, a moment for reflection and quiet contemplation. This is a call to create space in the midst of the narrative, to let the weight of the words sink in. In our own lives, the strategic pause serves the same purpose. It allows our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher-order thinking, to come back online after an emotional trigger. It allows us to move from a state of emotional reactivity to one of calm, considered response. When we wait to speak, our words carry more weight. They seem more thoughtful, more intentional. This is a form of power that is not aggressive or dominating. It is a power that is respectful of both yourself and the other person. A power that builds clarity instead of chaos. Have you ever noticed that the most memorable lines in a great speech or film are often preceded by a dramatic pause? I urge you to begin practicing this pause in your own life. When someone asks you a difficult question, don't feel the need to respond immediately. Take a breath. Count to 3, or simply say, "That's a good question. Let me think about that for a moment." This simple act of creating a pause will give you an incredible amount of control, not over others, but over yourself. And when you control yourself, you control your destiny. The true test of composure is not in a moment of quiet solitude, but when you are under the microscope. In a world that thrives on attention and observation, your ability to remain steady when all eyes are on you is the ultimate display of inner strength. This is not about performing it. It's about so mastering your internal landscape that external scrutiny becomes a magnifier of your composure, not a threat to it. The disciplined mind treats attention not as a spotlight of fear, but as an opportunity for its unwavering nature to shine. I witnessed this firsthand years ago with a friend I'll call Mark, a man who, in his quiet life, had cultivated an incredible level of inner calm. One day, his small, unassuming business was thrust into the public eye due to a successful innovation he had pioneered. He was invited to speak at a major industry conference, a room filled with thousands of people and a panel of sharp-witted journalists. Most people would have been paralyzed by the attention, but Mark was different. I watched him on stage. He didn't fidget, he didn't stumble over his words, and he never lost his steady, focused gaze. He spoke with the same quiet confidence he used in our private conversations. He treated the stage not as a moment of performance, but as a moment to simply do what he always did: communicate his truth clearly. His poise under pressure was so profound that the journalists, who were looking for a dramatic story, were disarmed. They couldn't rattle him. They couldn't find the crack in his armor because there was none. His composure became the story, earning him not just respect, but a deep and lasting admiration from his peers. From a spiritual perspective, this echoes a principle from the Musar tradition: the Jewish ethical movement. Musar teachers emphasized the concept of kavod habriot, or respect for all of creation. Part of this involves a deep respect for oneself, which is expressed through a dignified and controlled presence in all situations. When you are under scrutiny, your composure is an expression of this self-respect. You are saying, without words, my worth is not determined by your gaze, but by my own inner integrity. Physiologically, this is about controlling the fear response. Under observation, our bodies instinctively want to tense up, to become self-conscious. The key is to consciously override this reflex. You must focus not on yourself, but on the task at hand, the words you want to say, the point you want to make. This outward focus redirects the nervous energy and keeps your prefrontal cortex in charge. It's the difference between thinking, they are all watching me, and I am here to tell them this. This shift in focus is the key to turning observation from a threat into an amplifier of your composure. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt all eyes were on you, and it was hard to think clearly? The world is constantly scrutinizing you, your choices, your successes, your failures. Your ability to remain composed under this constant observation is a powerful form of self-mastery. It is a quiet declaration that your inner world is your own, and it cannot be broken, bought, or swayed by the noise of external judgment. Power, my friends, is not about what you say, but what you choose to show. The art of controlled expression is a discipline that allows you to manage every signal you broadcast to the world, from the arch of an eyebrow to the tone of your voice. This is not about deceit, it's about intentionality. By becoming a master of your own physical and verbal expression, you make yourself unpredictable, and in doing so, you gain control over the dynamic of any interaction. You are no longer a person whose every emotion is an open book. You are a person whose inner world is a fortress, and you are the one who holds the key. I once worked with a formidable businessman, a titan of industry I will call Mr. Feldman. He was known for his incredible negotiation skills, but what was truly remarkable was his face. It was a blank canvas. When someone presented him with a brilliant idea, he showed no excitement. When he heard bad news, he showed no fear. He would simply listen, his expression unreadable, his body language still. This wasn't a natural talent, it was a practiced art. He once told me that he spent years in front of a mirror, learning to control the micro-expressions that betray our true feelings. By doing this, he created an incredible advantage. When his competitors spoke, they never knew if they were winning or losing. They would fill the silence with more information, with concessions, with self-defeating explanations, all because they were desperate for a sign, any sign, of what he was thinking. Mr. Feldman's quiet, controlled expression gave him an almost supernatural ability to get the truth from people and to command every room he entered. This discipline finds its roots in the wisdom of our ancient texts. The Talmud speaks of the virtue of not revealing one's thoughts to others. This is not about being secretive, but about the profound recognition that our thoughts and emotions are a form of energy. By giving every passing feeling a free pass to express itself, we exhaust ourselves and empower others to use our weaknesses against us. A wise person learns to filter what they show. This is because emotions are meant to be a guide for ourselves, not a performance for others. The deliberate management of your facial expressions, your tone of voice, your eye contact, and your body language is a form of self-respect. It's a way of saying, my inner world is my sanctuary, and I will only share with you what is useful and true, not every fleeting feeling that passes through my mind. Have you ever been in a conversation where the other person's expressions were so easy to read that you felt you had the upper hand? The person who can control their expression in a moment of crisis, a moment of joy, or a moment of frustration is a person who has achieved a rare and powerful form of mastery. They have learned that true power is not in the grand gesture, but in the quiet, intentional signal. The path to this power begins with a simple act of awareness. Pay attention to your face in the mirror, to your voice in a recording, and to your body language in a meeting. This self-awareness is the first step toward becoming the conscious creator of your own expression, and in doing so, the conscious master of your own power. The calm that commands respect is not a product of luck or genetics. It is an active presence built over a lifetime of consistent discipline. It is the result of consistently choosing composure over chaos, and it is a form of leadership that is silent, contagious, and deeply enduring. While some might mistake this calm for passivity, it is, in fact, the opposite. It is a sign of a mind that is so strong, so secure in itself, that it does not need to resort to aggression or noise to be heard. This calm presence becomes an anchor in a tumultuous world, and it is the quiet force that everyone, consciously or unconsciously, seeks to be around. I saw this in a dear old friend I will call Joseph, a man who, in his youth, was a whirlwind of energy and ambition, much like myself. He built a successful business, but it nearly cost him his health and his family. In his later years, he underwent a profound transformation. He began to practice hit bodhidut, a form of quiet, personal prayer, and he cultivated an inner stillness that was palpable. He didn't become less effective, he became more so. His presence in a room was like a quiet fire, not loud, but intensely warm and powerful. When he spoke, it was always with a calm, steady voice, and his words carried an unmistakable weight. His team and his family didn't follow him because he was the loudest or the most aggressive. They followed him because his calm presence was a promise of stability and wisdom. In a moment of panic, they looked to Joseph not for a quick fix, but for the unwavering calm that he exuded. His composure was not just a personal trait, it had become a silent form of leadership that earned him a deep and lasting respect. The principle of the calm that commands respect is deeply embedded in the spiritual laws of creation. Our ancient texts teach us that the divine is often revealed not in the tempest or the earthquake, but in a still, small voice. This is a profound truth. The most powerful forces in the universe are not chaotic, they are ordered and calm. The turning of the planets, the flow of the tides, these are silent, powerful rhythms. When we cultivate a calm presence, we are aligning ourselves with these fundamental laws. We are choosing to be a source of order in a chaotic world. Physiologically, this calm presence is contagious. When a leader remains calm in a crisis, their team's nervous systems begin to regulate in response. The leader's composed state acts as a signal of safety, which allows others to move from a state of fight or flight to a state of calm, rational action. This is why a leader's composure is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Have you ever been in a stressful situation where one person's calm presence completely changed the dynamic for everyone? My friends, the path to building a life of true abundance is not about fighting and struggling against the world. It is about becoming an anchor of calm in the midst of it. It's about building an inner fortress of peace that is so unshakable that it becomes a source of silent, powerful leadership. This is the calm that doesn't just command respect, it earns it, and it gives you a power that is not fleeting, but eternal. The untouchable mind is the ultimate form of power. It is a mind that cannot be broken by adversity, bought by external promises of wealth, or swayed by the noise and opinions of the world. This mind is not a gift, it is a fortress built through the daily discipline of awareness and self-mastery. When you achieve this state, you are no longer dependent on external validation, and you are no longer a victim of your circumstances. You become the conscious architect of your own reality, shaping your environment rather than being shaped by it. I have a dear old friend, a scholar and a man of great spiritual depth, who I will call Reb Asher. In his life, he has faced immense personal and financial challenges. His business failed, he lost his life savings to a dishonest partner, and he faced serious health struggles. Most people would have been crushed by these events, But Reb Asher remained unmoved. Not because he was emotionless, but because his mind was a fortress. He understood that his true wealth was not in his bank account, but in his inner world. He filtered the external events of his life through the timeless principles of his faith and his own hard-won wisdom. When his business failed, he saw it not as a personal defeat, but as a lesson, a nisayon, a test of his faith and his character. When others offered him get-rich-quick schemes to recover his losses, he simply smiled and politely declined, because his mind was not for sale. His inner world was so rich that he did not need the fleeting validation of external success. This allowed him to remain grounded and eventually rebuild his life on an even stronger foundation. This concept of the untouchable mind is deeply tied to the Jewish mystical tradition's understanding of Ein Sof, or the infinite, and our own divine spark. When we are able to detach from the finite, from the fleeting chaos of the material world, we can connect to a deeper, infinite source of strength within ourselves. This is not about a psychological trick, it is a spiritual truth. It is about building a mind that is so rooted in its own purpose and truth that it cannot be swayed by external noise. Physiologically, this is about strengthening the neural pathways that allow for a sense of inner peace and resilience. It's about training our brains to see external events not as personal attacks or threats, but as neutral data to be processed with clarity. The untouchable mind doesn't ignore the world it engages with it from a position of profound strength and security. Have you ever known someone who seemed to have an unshakable inner peace, no matter what was happening around them? The path to building a life of true abundance and freedom is not about fighting the world, but about building an inner world that is so strong it cannot be touched. It is a life built on a foundation of discipline, awareness, and a deep, unshakable connection to your own truth. This is a power that money cannot buy, and one that the world cannot take away. The true genius of stillness, as my wise friend Reb Asher understood, is that it is a form of non-attachment. It is a profound spiritual discipline that allows us to engage with the world, with its opportunities, its people, and its challenges, without being bound by its outcomes. This is a core lesson from my own journey. For decades, I chased success with a frantic energy, believing that my happiness was attached to the next deal, the next promotion, the next possession. I was like a drowning man, flailing my arms in a desperate attempt to stay afloat. But the truth is, true abundance flows not to the one who clings, but to the one who is able to let go. Stillness is the practice of letting go. It is the act of being present with what is, rather than being in a constant state of grasping for what isn't. Let me tell you about Margaret, a woman I met in my later years. She had a successful career in a creative field, but she was always stressed, always anxious about her next project. She was deeply attached to the outcome of every pitch, every client meeting. A successful project meant a week of elation, a failure meant a month of depression. She was on an emotional roller coaster, and her body and mind were paying the price. We talked a lot about the Jewish philosophical concept of bitul, or self-nullification. This doesn't mean erasing yourself, it means nullifying your ego's frantic need to control every outcome. It means recognizing that you are a vessel, a channel for creative flow, and that your job is to do your best and then let go of the result. When Margaret began to practice this, to do the work with passion but to then release the outcome to a higher power, something remarkable happened. Her creative flow deepened. The anxiety that had been a constant companion began to dissipate. She became not just more successful, but also more at peace, because she was no longer attached to the endless cycle of external validation. This is a powerful lesson for anyone who seeks to build a life of true wealth. Whether you're an investor, an entrepreneur, or a creator, the market and the world will never be a perfect reflection of your efforts. There will be good days and bad days, wins and losses. If you are deeply attached to every outcome, you will be in a constant state of turmoil. But when you practice stillness as a form of non-attachment, you create a space for clarity and wisdom. You begin to see the bigger picture. You can make decisions not from a place of fear or desperation, but from a place of calm, objective analysis. Physiologically, this practice lowers cortisol levels and strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that governs wise, long-term thinking. This is the ultimate paradox of true power. By detaching from the outcome, you actually gain a deeper, more profound control over your own inner world. Have you ever noticed that the most successful people seem to have a certain nonchalance about their success? The path to abundance is not about clinging to what you have, but about cultivating a spirit of non-attachment that allows you to receive what is meant for you. By practicing stillness, you are telling the universe that you are a conscious creator, not a desperate consumer, and in doing so, you open yourself up to a flow of abundance that is effortless and profound. The strategic pause isn't just a powerful tool for negotiation, it is a foundational principle for building a life of abundance and deep, meaningful relationships. In my experience, the greatest mistakes in both finance and family life are born of a reactive, fear-based response. The strategic pause, when applied to these areas, acts as a profound filter, transforming rash decisions into wise choices. It is the silent space where fear gives way to faith, and where a knee-jerk reaction is replaced by a considered loving response. I watched this play out in the life of a friend I'll call Daniel. Daniel was a brilliant investor, but he had a hot temper, a trait that had cost him dearly in his personal life. A simple disagreement with his wife would escalate into a full-blown argument, not because of the initial issue, but because of his reactive, immediate need to be right. When we worked together, I encouraged him to apply the same strategic pause he used in his business negotiations to his conversations at home. The next time his wife came to him with a complaint, instead of immediately defending himself, he took a breath and simply said, "That's a very good point. Let me think about that for a moment." He would then consciously pause, creating a space for reflection. This simple act was revolutionary. It disarmed his wife, who was expecting a fight, and it gave Daniel the mental room to see her perspective. He learned that the silence, rather than being a sign of weakness, was a profound act of love and respect. It showed her that her feelings were being heard and considered. The strategic pause saved not only his investments, but also his marriage. The power of this pause is rooted in the spiritual principle of ratzon, or will. When we are reactive, our actions are not driven by our conscious will, but by our emotional triggers. We are a puppet on a string. The strategic pause is the moment when we reclaim our will. We are saying, "I will not be dictated by this fleeting emotion. I will choose my response." This is a profound act of self-sovereignty. In a business context, it means not buying or selling based on the day's headlines, but on the long-term, rational plan you've already laid out. It means not being swept away by the latest trend, but waiting patiently for a truly valuable opportunity to present itself. This is because the strategic pause allows the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, to override the amygdala, the seat of emotional reaction. It's a simple, biological hack for living a more abundant and peaceful life. Have you ever wished you could take back something you said in the heat of a moment? The strategic pause is a gift you give to yourself and to those you love. It is the discipline of creating a space for wisdom to enter before chaos takes over. By making this a conscious practice in your life, you will find that your decisions become wiser, your relationships become deeper, and your peace of mind becomes unshakable. The true internal and external wealth of composure is perhaps the most profound lesson I have ever learned. For so many years, I believed that external wealth, the money in the bank, the businesses I built, would bring me peace. I chased it with a frantic energy only to find that at the height of my success, I was in a state of profound spiritual poverty. It was only when I began to cultivate an inner sense of calm that the true nature of wealth was revealed to me. It is a state of being, not a state of having. Composure is not just a tool for power, it is the source code for a life of effortless abundance, a wealth that cannot be measured in dollars, but is infinitely more valuable. Let me tell you about a successful physician I know, a man I will call Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben had built a thriving medical practice, but he was a constant ball of stress. He was anxious about his finances, worried about his patients, and perpetually overwhelmed. His wealth, instead of bringing him peace, was a constant source of anxiety. It was a prison built of gold. We began to talk about the Jewish philosophical concept of simcha, or inner joy, not as an emotion, but as a spiritual state of being. We worked on cultivating composure not as a means to an end, but as a discipline in itself. He started with simple things, taking a walk in nature without his phone, practicing a few minutes of quiet breathing before he saw his first patient. Over time, this discipline began to change his entire being. The inner calm he cultivated began to transform his external reality. He became a better doctor, not because he was smarter, but because he was more present with his patients. His business became more successful, not because he worked harder, but because his decisions were clearer and more intentional. The inner wealth of composure led to an external flow of abundance, because he was no longer a frantic chaser, but a calm, centered creator. From a physiological perspective, this makes perfect sense. A state of perpetual stress and anxiety floods our system with cortisol, the very hormone that dulls creativity, impairs our judgment, and physically makes us sick. When we cultivate composure, we are not just calming our minds, we are actively changing our physical and emotional state for the better. This state of calm allows for a deeper, more creative flow. It allows our intuition to speak, and it allows us to see opportunities that our anxious mind would have missed. This is why a person of true composure often seems to have an effortless abundance. It is not because they are working harder, but because they are working smarter from a place of quiet strength. Have you ever noticed how the people who are most at peace seem to attract good fortune into their lives? The path to true wealth is not about more doing, but about more being. It is about understanding that the most valuable asset you will ever own is your own inner peace. By cultivating composure, you are not just building a life of power, you are building a life of profound and lasting abundance, a wealth that is both internal and external, and one that is a true reflection of your most authentic self. The true mark of an abundant life is not found in the portfolio, but in the mind's ability to resist the constant barrage of the world's noise. In our time, we are relentlessly bombarded by financial news, market trends, social media hysteria, and get-rich-quick schemes. The truly powerful mind is not swayed by this cacophony. It is an untouchable fortress, built on timeless principles, that allows a person to remain focused on what is eternal and true. The path to this kind of power is to stop chasing the illusion of wealth and to instead become a conscious creator of it, a creator whose inner compass is not a reflection of the outside world's chaos, but of a quiet, unshakable truth from within. Let me share with you a final story, one about a woman I mentored for a time, a young woman named Leah. Leah was a brilliant investor, but she was addicted to the news cycle. She would wake up and immediately check the latest market headlines, spend her day monitoring every fluctuation, and go to bed with a mind racing with fear and anxiety. She was a slave to the noise, and her decisions were a reflection of that fear. I urged her to try a different path. We began to focus not on the external noise, but on the internal principles. We talked about the importance of being mekaven, or intentional, with her resources. We talked about investing not for a quick profit, but for the long-term good. I encouraged her to take one day a week where she would completely disconnect from all financial news. This was a radical act for her, a terrifying one even. But what happened was profound. The day she disconnected, she found a quiet clarity she had not known in years. She began to see her investments not as ticker symbols on a screen, but as small acts of faith and partnership. The noise had been silencing her own intuition. By creating a space of quiet, she found a power she did not know she possessed, the power of a mind that could not be touched. This is the ultimate lesson of abundance. The external world, with all its promises and its threats, is a powerful force. But its power is only in its ability to convince you that it is the ultimate reality. The truly untouchable mind knows better. It knows that the ultimate reality is found in the deep, quiet place within us, the place where we connect to our own truth and our own purpose. Physiologically, this is about training our brain to filter out what is irrelevant. It's about building the discipline to say no to the constant stream of information that seeks to hijack our attention and our peace of mind. The person who can remain calm and focused amidst the world's clamor is the person who is truly free, because they are not being led by the world, they are leading their own life and creating their own reality. The path to an untouchable mind is not an easy one. It requires a lifetime of discipline, of choosing stillness over chaos, of choosing purpose over noise. But it is a path that leads not just to wealth, but to a profound and unshakable peace, a freedom that no one and no thing can ever take away from you.